Hey everybody, welcome back to another year of the Preacher and the Prodigy podcast. This is our third year about doing the podcast. Fourth, what is it?
Third, fourth. It's something in there.
Third or fourth year. I'm the Preacher, he's the Prodigy, and together we make picks of about 5 or 6 games every weekend against the spread just to keep it fair. You're a lot taller than you were last year in the Preacher
I am
and Prodigy.
a lot taller.
This year on Father's Day, you eclipsed me in height, and now you're standing at 6'11". It's crazy. So we're excited, and this is our preseason predictions podcast. It's a chance for us to look really dumb when that year ends with some kind of overview, national, big picture ideas as we look ahead to playoffs, Heisman, and then some conference champion kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to start this one by just doing some top 10 stuff, and that will wind down with our top 4. Now, these are not our power rankings. This is our predictions. This is based on schedule. This is not who we think are the best teams. This is we think who will be there in the end based on
bowl games, playoffs, all that kind of stuff.
Depth, schedule, things like that all factor in. This is where we think, essentially, where we will be on about December 15 and then on January 15.
Maybe an injury. I don't know. Someone could go wild with that, but...
Yep. Injury can be a big thing, too. So we're going to count down from 10 to 5, and then we'll get into our top 4 playoff picks. So do you want to go first with your number 10?
Sure, I'll go first. My number 10 team is going to be Penn State. I know you really don't think very highly of them because they only went 7-6 last year. A big part of that was for 2 reasons. Number 1...
They're garbage.
No, number 1,
and
Sean
number
Clifford
2, James Franklin.
No. James Franklin won a Rose Bowl. Maybe made it. Probably lost to USC. But one reason was that Sean Clifford got injured for a lot of the time. They had to put in a quarterback who really didn't fit their system, I don't think. Their offensive line was young, pretty sure. And their quarterback just really couldn't get the ball out to those great receivers. You know, Parker Washington, Jahan Dotson last year. This year, I believe Sean Clifford is coming back as a super senior. I think he should be healthy most of the year. And also on the defensive side, P.J. Mustipher was out with the ACL tear last year. I think he'll be a huge impact on that defensive line. I think losing some corners will hurt. But I think running the ball, they'll be solid as usual. I think stopping the pass, they'll be fine. On offense, I think running the ball, they will be solid with their starting running back coming back along with a big recruit. And passing the ball, they will be probably better than last year. I know they lose Jahan Dotson, but Parker Washington can become a plug-and-play kind of a player. He'll be returning punts, too. So I think they'll be solid this year. Yeah.
My number 10 is Minnesota. Your number 9. I'm taking the team that I think is going to have the best record in the Big Ten West. I think that they have a really good coaching staff, even if you think PJ Fleck's weird. Kurt Sriracha is back. He's the one that really made hay with Fleck 2 years ago. Went to Penn State last year. Wasn't a good fit, but he's back with PJ Fleck again. Experience in the backfield. Ibrahim is back.
For sure.
And I think that they are going to win the West. I think that the number 10 team in the country is a team that's probably going to finish at 10-3. That's where I see the Gophers, so I have them as my number 10 team.
Kind of like that pick.
All right.
Your number 9.
I'll go with my number 9 next. My number 9 team, and again, this is based on where I think the final polls will have them, is going to be my Power 5 non-team. So whatever we're calling the non-Power 5, the Group of 5 or whatever. I'm going to go the Houston Cougars. I think the Houston Cougars are going to be something like 12-1 at the end of the year. I think they're definitely going to be in a New Year's 6 game. They might be in an excellent New Year's 6 game. I always like Daniel Holgerson. I like the offense that he runs. Experienced talent coming back and a favorable schedule, so I'm going Houston with my number 9 team.
Well, my problem with Houston is they're going to be able to score points, but will they be able... I think they should be able, but, the skill talent on defense isn't quite there as much as some Power 5 teams.
Of course it's not. They're not a Power 5 team. They don't play a Power 5 schedule. So this is where they're going to end up ranked. You're number 9.
All right, my number 9... Ooh, who do I have? My number 9 team, I believe it was... Shoot. I think it was Notre Dame. Yeah.
Okay, you're going with the Irish.
My number 9... Notre Dame... I don't think they should have been ranked number 5 in the preseason. Their defense is going to be good. They have a All-American safety, and they have a great defensive lineman. Up front on the offensive side, they got one of the best centers in the country. And tight end, they got Michael Mayer, who is arguably the best tight end.
I'll argue that all day.
In the
Give me Brock Bowers.
But in the schedule, or the skill positions rather, Tyler Buckner barely beat out Drew Pine. I don't think either of those guys are really great quarterbacks. Chris Tyree came back after being a backup for, who was it? Their starting run back last year who did fairly well. Their receivers aren't really there.
No.
So I don't think that they're going to be as high as people think. They got some people here and there, but I just think that overall they're not going to be, say, top 6 team.
Yeah, we'll talk in our next podcast about that opening game against Ohio State. That's going to be a major measuring stick. To me, I think 2 of the most fascinating teams in the country are those traditional rivals of Notre Dame and USC. I am a buyer on USC, and I think Notre Dame's a year away. You're number 8.
My number 8 team is Texas. I think that this will be the year that Steve Sarkisian gets it done. I think that Quinn Ewers will bring some, I don't know, something that J.J. McCarthy would bring. Xavier Worthy, who we hardly ever want to talk about, is coming back as a All-American along with Bijan Robinson, who could be a top 3 player in the country. He moves so quick, he's looking like Barry Sanders. But with the Houston problem, I guess this would kind of back up my argument for Texas, because, I mean, Houston defense isn't really there, Texas defense isn't really there, but
didn't they just hire Gary Patterson as their defensive coordinator?
They might have.
He's an excellent defensive mind. He built the TCU Horned Frogs and the one best defensive football factories, especially relative to recruiting talent, that I've seen in the last 20 years.
But the skill there shouldn't be that great, but then again, like, no defense in the Big 12 is that great, aside from maybe Iowa State or West Virginia. So I think that with the schedule and the teams in the Big 12, I think they're going to move past Baylor and Oklahoma and Oklahoma State, and I think they're going to be the Big 12 champion and finish number 8.
All right. My number 8 team is the Georgia Bulldogs. I'm selling high. I think that Georgia, not that they caught lightning in a bottle, but the generational talent that they had on defense last year kind of covered over a little bit of deficiency in terms of offense. They always did put plenty of points on the board, but you talk about short fields and things like that coming from an excellent defense and turnovers. I think that Georgia loses a couple games this year. I
lose a dumb one.
I think that they'll lose a difficult one. I don't think they'll lose to Oregon, but I think that Oregon game might be a wake up call. I think that Dan Lanning scouting his old team might provide a little bit of a headache there for Georgia. So I'm putting Georgia this year at my number 8. Certainly an excellent team. My number 7 team I already mentioned. Again, looking at the strength of the Pac-12, I'm going to go USC at number 7. I think that Lincoln Riley is not going to have it all figured out early on. They're going to be a fascinating team to watch. But I think that they will rely on Caleb Williams and his ability to win games both with his arm and with his leg, and just brilliant talent on the perimeter that I don't think any team on their schedule outside of Oregon or Notre Dame will be able to really challenge. I think USC is going to take the title of the Pac-12 away from Utah. I think Utah is going to take a step back. And so I'm going to SC Trojans as my number 7 team. Your number 7.
My number 7 is going to be a big surprise. I'm going like wild here. I'm going to say it's NC State. I think that I feel like the linebacker might be one of the probably the most important defensive position aside from maybe safeties. But their linebacker group is incredible. They have probably two second-team All-Americans, both in that linebacking crew. The rest of the defense isn't bad either. And the offense, they have Devin O'Leary, who I think is going to have a breakout season.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of broke out last year a little bit. They do lose their starting running back. Their line should be great. The receivers should be solid. I think this is a team that will bind together well, mesh together well. They'll win some games. They'll make it tough for Clemson, put competition on them. And I think in the ACC, it's a little more tighter than, say, I don't know, maybe not even any conference Power 5, but I think that they will exceed expectations, and I think that they'll be number 7.
Okay, you're number 6.
My number 6 then will be Clemson.
Okay.
Because, I don't know, having two teams come from the same conference, the ACC, seems a little bit wild. But I think what Clemson does...
that happens.
It happens.
Yeah, I mean...
But...
They're going to have to win all their other games because they're going to delete one of each other's games.
Yeah, but with what happens, what they don't have on offense, they bring back on defense. Their corners and linebackers should be solid, but their defensive line might be the best we've ever seen, including that 2016 team that Clemson had. But I think DJU is going to do better this year. I think being put in the starting position was kind of tough. Will Shipley's coming back. He's a great running back. But the rest of the offense, I don't know. Question marks. But other than that, I think the defense is really going to be the leader in this, kind of like Georgia last year.
And recruiting is just the lifeblood of college football, of course, and this is why we have so many of the same teams at the top. I'll preview coming attractions. I have Clemson as my number 5 team, so I'm right there with you. I do think the loss of both coordinators will impact them. But by the end of last year, Clemson was playing very, very good football. They had shaken off some of the malaise of some of the issues with DJU early on.
They finished 10-3. Don't forget
that was a down year, so I can certainly see Clemson getting back to something like 11-2 or 12-2 this year. So they're my number 5 team. My number 6 team, and we always try to have one team completely off the radar.
This is your off the radar.
This is my off the radar one. Maybe not as surprising, but I like the team that really pushes for the top of the SEC West this year is going to be not Brian Kelly. It's going to be Lane Kiffin. I'm going spicy here, and I'm going to take the Rebs led by Jackson Dart. With not having a proven defense by any means, but putting points on the board, possession after possession after possession, thanks to Lane Kiffin's ability to draw a plan. I just think they're lying in the weeds right now. All the attention's on Bama as a preseason number 1. The rest of the attention is going to Brian Kelly and Jimbo Fisher with the feud he's having with Nick Saban. And there's Lane Kiffin, just kind of, and they actually, people are starting to look at Arkansas a little bit, but just steadily Lane Kiffin building the program with a lot of transfers. And I think his ability to coach up a team, years and years of experience. Remember, he's an NFL head coach. I think that Lane Kiffin is going to have the Rebs running up and down the field, and I have them as my number 6 team. So
that's a wild pick. I don't think that, I don't know. I mean, if you're going to say offense in the SEC, you're looking at Ole Miss from last year, you're looking at Tennessee, you're looking at those two teams. So both did good, just not top number 6 good.
I'm not saying they're the 6th best team in the country.
But yeah,
I'm saying
they're
going to win a couple of games. There's going to be, some 3 and 4 lost division teams that are really good teams in the SEC West. Can the Rebels win a couple of those games by a touchdown and just stay above the froth there and get to 11-2 at the end of the year?
So you're
I'm saying yes.
So you think that Lane Kiffin's offense will be able to squeak by A&M, LSU, and make it tough on Bama with keeping up with their defense? Is that what you're saying, basically?
I don't think Ole Miss beats Alabama.
Yeah,
I think
I don't
Ole
either.
Miss is
I'm
is going to be the second ranked team, the second place team rather in the SEC West. All right, we're to your number 5 and 4.
My number 5 team is going to be Utah. I know you say that they're going to take a step back. They definitely will on the defensive side. Losing Devin Lloyd, who's been there for decades, is going to be huge. Losing the rest of their defense is a lot of their defense is going to be rough, trying to rebuild. But I know that I think their defense will be solid, as it always is. But what they bring back on offense is incredible. They bring back Both of their tight ends who did great last year, they bring back a running back who ran for 1,600 yards, I'm pretty sure. They bring back Cameron Rising. They do lose a good receiver in Britton Covey. But other than that, they bring incredible talent back. But
to me, Utah is that team that caught lightning in the bottle. And even though the roster hasn't had as much turnover, sometimes a team just has magic in one year. Every year we talk about this, there's a team that starts the year in the top 10 and doesn't finish in the top 25. To me, I'm putting that target squarely on Utah. I think the other team could potentially be Notre Dame, but I think it's far more likely that it's Utah. And this is from a guy, I think Kyle Whittingham is one of the best 5 college football coaches. A couple of times Michigan's had vacancies. I've wanted them to really look at Kyle Whittingham. Tremendous coach, gets the most out of his players. But I think that this year's going to be tough to repeat the magic of last year.
Well, I also think that, Oregon's going to be great. They bring back lots of talent, and they have Dan Lanning. But I don't think Utah or USC is going to be quite as good as people think. No. I know Lincoln Riley is going to be a great coach. I know their offense is going to be crazy. But what will they do in the trenches against Utah when they go up against those big guys in that running attack? I think Utah will win the Pac-12, not incredibly easily, but fairly easily. Past Oregon.
Well, I have a couple of interesting picks in here, and that's certainly one of mine, USC, but I don't want to go chalk all the time because I think we're now headed towards some pretty chalky picks for our playoff, unless you got something surprising. So let me first hear your number 2 versus number 3 game, and then I'll give you my number 2.
My number 2 versus number 3 game is, at the time, it will be Ohio State versus Georgia. I know you say that Georgia's going to fall off. I think they won't be nearly as good as they were last year. But they do bring back talent on that defensive side. Don't get me wrong. They didn't lose everybody. Jalen Carter is a freak. Nolan Smith is back as a top tackler. Keely Ringo, who is probably made the most clutch play in the last generation at Georgia. But I think their offense will get better. I know they lose their 2 running backs, but I think Kenny McIntosh will fit better in a more pass-heavy system. I think that Stetson Bennett will emerge as the right quarterback with Ladd McConkey and the rest of their receivers, including Brock Bowers and was it Darnell Washington, their 2 tight ends who are going to go bonkers. Line is going to be great as always. I think their offense will take a step up, and I think their defense will take 2 steps down, and therefore they will end up being number 3. And then Ohio State will be number 2 for points that I will get to later. I think that Jim Knowles will bring them to number 2, where they couldn't get last year because their defense wasn't that great. Other than that, they bring back top receiver, line, great running back. C.J. Stroud is back. But defense is only going to get better with Jim Knowles, and offense is only probably going to get better with having all those guys step up.
You lose Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave, and suddenly you can be better. I'm not so convinced that they're destined to be better, but yeah, we saw a preview of their 2022 offense in the Rose Bowl, and they were going up and down the field with JS. So my number 2 versus number 3, I'm going to have as going into the playoff. My number 2 team in the country is going to be a 1-loss Alabama. I have a little early on just a meshing of the skill positions. They don't have the plug-and-play immediacy at the wide receiver position and what Jahmyr Gibbs is able to do out of the backfield. Obviously, you're looking at the returning Heisman Trophy winner who can do a lot of things. But I think Alabama is going to lose one in the first half of the year. I don't know which game it is. And then they're going to figure it out. I've thought about Texas. I'm not quite as high on Texas as a whole as you are. They definitely would be in my top 15, but they're not in my top 10. And I have Alabama playing number 3 Michigan for the very reason that last year Michigan played Georgia so as to avoid a playoff in which it's the exact same game as the week before. I'm going to have Ohio State as my number 1 team going into the playoff, having beat Michigan and Columbus. I have a 1-loss, otherwise undefeated Michigan playing in the number 3 position against Alabama in whatever that game is. If that's the Peach Bowl, it looks like. In Georgia. So I'm very high on Michigan, as you know, because I think that their offensive line play is going to win them a lot of games. I think their offensive MVP is going to be anyone's talking about. It's going to be Olu Oluwatimi, the transfer center, who's going to make the line calls and just be able to get everybody mashing for those tailbacks in that spread passing.
Well, I really want to get to my 1 versus 4 because it's kind of the same aspect you said. I think it's gonna be Bama and Michigan at 1 and 4. I think here's my pick: Ohio State and Michigan are gonna run through the Big Ten. Except maybe Penn State might give them some hiccups, but they're gonna run through the Big Ten. I don't think Michigan State's gonna be that good. I think Kenneth Walker was their just had to be guy for them to do good.
I disagree. I think Michigan State's gonna be very good, but I'll go on. Finish your.
But I think that when the game gets into Columbus, it's going to be like a 40-34 game where there's going to be one bad call that goes for Ohio State in Columbus. They're going to win the game, and then they're going to get the number 1 spot, or the number 2 spot rather, because it's a close game against another good team. And then Michigan.
Do you think that Ohio State is undefeated at the end of the regular season?
Yes, but I also think Alabama will be undefeated at the regular season.
That's the difference.
That's why, because I think Alabama will have an easier game against Georgia than Ohio State will against Michigan. That's why Alabama will be number 1. Those 2 teams will both be undefeated. Mm-hmm. And then Michigan will have a good enough season to get into the playoffs, sneak in. But I don't think that, as you said, Alabama, they don't have the plug-and-play guys. But Bryce Young is back, running for another Heisman. Jahmyr Gibbs brings them something that they didn't have last year, and a huge pass-catching running back, I'm fairly certain. Mm-hmm. What Michigan has, as we've heard day and night about, is great guys stepping up. Only good things about the Michigan team. Easy schedule, I think, clears the path for a number 4.
So you talked already about Jim Knowles coming over from Oklahoma State, and that cues me up for my really interesting number 1 versus number 4. I think this is the Jim Knowles Bowl. There's one team that doesn't deserve to be there but survives. I have Ohio State playing Oklahoma State in the 1 versus 4 game. Oklahoma State coming into that game at 12-1, something like that. Not necessarily blowing people away, but I think Oklahoma State wins the Big 12. They win a rematch, probably over Baylor, to go into the CFP. And it's going to be spicy, but it's going to be number 1 OSU versus number 4 OSU. I do have Ohio State winning that game. And so I'm going to say that my national championship is going to be Alabama over Ohio State in a very, very contrasting styles game. Alabama led by its defense, Ohio State led by its offense. I like Alabama to make a couple more plays. I'll take the Crimson Tide to give Nick Saban his 45th national championship.
Oof.
So
Oklahoma State at number 4. I know Spencer Sanders is coming back.
Cincinnati was number 4.
Yeah, but Cincinnati was already like number 8 at the beginning of the season.
Oh, what is Oklahoma State? 11? 12?
Like 17th or something. But what Jim Knowles did was incredible. He got all the guys to work together in a okay defense before. I know that they were like good according to Big 12 standards, but according to national standards, they were decent. But
all I gotta say is, come after me. I'm a man. I'm 40. The mullet himself. So you have, who is your national championship?
Bama and Ohio State. But I think that Ohio State will win easier than they did against Michigan. Since it's a rivalry game, I think Jim Knowles will do what he did at Oklahoma State when they didn't really have a great guy besides maybe Marvin Harrison. Or, excuse me, who's the back? I can't think of him. But
who are you talking about?
Talking about the lineman. The number 2 on the freak list.
Oh, Marvin Harrison was number 2 on the list, but he's a wide receiver.
Yeah. Thought we were talking about D-line. Anyway, I think he will do to the defense what he did at Oklahoma State. They're going to be great. They're going to run that system very well. Their offense I don't think, will be stopped. The problem with me in the championship game is how will they stop Will Anderson. He is incredible. I mean, they also got another guy on the other side rushing the quarterback. How will that offensive line adjust? Will Will Anderson run over him?
DJ Dale is the other guy coming up. And
how will they block? I think that they'll be able to get the ball out quick to Smith and Jigba and Marvin Harrison Jr. I think that Ohio State will just make more plays in, I guess.
Well, I think what Alabama can do to Ohio State in 2022, or technically calendar year 2023, is what Michigan did, which is pressure off the edge, run the ball, try to keep that offense off the field as long as possible. And I hope that C.J. Stroud does make a mistake. Justin Fields looked invincible until he went up against the Clemson defense, and I think he had 3 interceptions after maybe having won the whole year. So it's possible to do that against a Ryan Day team. So much does depend on Jim Knowles. Was it, in fact, Jim Knowles, or was it the maturation of the players at Oklahoma State? I'm saying it's a little bit of both, but I like the pokes in a saucy pick.
Well, one quick thing for me is Alabama does not have a Hassan Haskins and a best offensive line in the country. And Ohio State didn't have Jim Knowles with like a top 5 rushing defense in the country. That's what really sells me. And
Michigan didn't have Bryce Young
going up against them. They had C.J. Stroud.
No, I'm just saying, but Michigan beat Ohio State without Bryce Young. And so I think that with Bryce Young and that much time to come together, I'm going to take Bama because it's probably the safest pick every year. All right, so we've kind of talked about our conference champions. Before we do our Heisman Trophy, is there anyone that we did not mention that is going to be your conference champion? I'm going to go, I've got Ohio State, I've got Alabama, I've got Clemson, I've got USC, and I've got Oklahoma State, along with Houston coming out of the G5.
Well, the only difference...
AAC.
Excuse me. The only difference I would make is
you're gonna have
Utah, and then have Texas as a Big 12 champion.
Okay.
Other than that, I like it. I think Houston's gonna have a great year. I don't think Cincinnati can get back to where they were last year, maybe the year before that. They lose too much. I think Houston's gonna win the AAC and be the best Group of 5 team.
All right. So let's give me your Heisman Trophy. Let's just do our runners up first in any particular order. 4 people who you can see being in New York City at the Downtown Athletic Club for the presentation, but will not win it. Who are your top 4 also Rands for the Heisman?
Okay, I've got Will Anderson, Bryce Young, and then Bijan Robinson, and then I think I might go, I don't know, probably just going to take a safe pick, say Jackson Smith and Jigba goes off again. And then my winner's going to be C.J. Stroud. All
right. Well, I'm different from you on a lot of these. If I believe this much in him, I'm going to have Spencer Sanders in there. He had a fantastic freshman year, a little bit of a down year last year. I think he's going to throw the ball all over the yard. I'm going to take a person we don't like talking about. We're going to go Xavier Worthy, making some of those plays that get enough Sports Center plays to show up in the halftimes of all the other games people are watching to get enough buzz. I think that he's going to be for Quinn Ewers what many moons ago Braylon Edwards was for Chad Henne. Just a safety valve, throw it up, tell the guy to make something special out of the play, and I think he does. I like Will Anderson to get to New York City as well on the sheer reputation. He may not have 17 sacks like he had last year, but he's going to command that defense, and he's going to make enough eye-popping plays that, like Aiden Hutchinson, deserves to be there. Yep. And then a little, just again, kind of a wild card. I'm going to put Braylon Allen there. I think that Wisconsin's going to be much better this year, and they're going to try to win games without Graham Mertz. And I think a year of conditioning for Braylon Allen, he's going to be in there as well. I was going to put /Mo Ibrahim, but because I like that, but I think at the end of the day, Braylon Allen's going to have better statistics because I think more of Tanner Morgan than I do of Graham Mertz.
Yes.
But I'm going to go chalk too. I think C.J. Stroud at the controls of that Ohio State offense. You're looking at Harrison and Fleming, JSN, Travion Henderson, Emeka Egbugba or whatever. They just
guy
have
from NC State who popped off.
Yeah, they've just got wide receivers all over the map, and I think the pinpoint accuracy of C.J. Stroud, video game numbers are going to be, at minimum, we're talking about close to 5,000 yards passing potentially for this guy. Trevion Henderson, I think maybe Trevion Henderson.
Evan Hall.
Yeah, Evan Hall is a baller, but he's going to have to split carries with that number 7. I can't think of what his name is.
Cam Porter, I'm pretty sure.
I think Trevion Henderson gets exposed to not be as good maybe as people are making him out to be. I think the first team running back in the country is going to be Deuce Vaughn by the amount of carries and the ways that he gets, the way that gets featured. But someone like Braylon Allen will be there too. And I really think the best sophomore tailback in the country, and this is a hot take for Michigan, I think it's Donovan Edwards.
Well,
I think Donovan Edwards is going to come in a year from now. We're going to be talking about this guy as a definite Heisman candidate because of the different ways Michigan will use him. They're going to line him up in the backfield, and then they're going to split him out, get him matched on the linebacker, and that is just going to be death. They're going to line him up as a wide receiver against corners, and they're going to throw him the ball out on the hitches, and then just expect corners to try to take him down. So I'm a big fan.
Line him up as a third-string quarterback like he did against Iowa.
I think there's going to be. Well, he didn't even line up. That was a halfback pass. They pitched it to him and he threw it. But I do think an Edwards cat is something I would definitely expect to see coming, especially if there is an injury to one of Michigan's two quarterbacks.
One thing I don't like as a running back, I don't think Deuce Vaughn is like running the ball. I don't think he's that good, but he is definitely a threat in the passing game.
Yeah, and that's what you have to, to be an All-American, you have to make plays in the return game and the passing game. You have to do some wildcat things like that. But I think that who else is Kansas State going to use? I mean, it's going to be Deuce Vaughn. So, all right. So those are our Heisman Trophy. You want to say a couple hot takes on the Michigan Wolverines this year before we wrap up? If you don't care about Michigan, you could probably turn the podcast off. But maybe.
We got Northwestern College coming.
Yeah, I don't have much. So my Northwestern thing, I think it's going to be Groundhog Day. Another year, same thing. The GPAC is going to be Morningside, Northwestern, Dordt in that order, and then everybody else. And probably Dort's going to have 2 losses, Northwestern's going to have 1, and Morningside's probably going to go undefeated. And I hope I'm wrong. But I just don't know enough about rosters or turnover or even where games are being played because you can't bank on, an alternating home and away like you can.
I think they're going to be more of a running team this year. They don't have Tyson. That's a huge loss. I mean, losing the best player in their history.
Be more specific. It's going to be a more running back. Yeah, because, unless Gramstad is in there and he plays QB a little bit, he can run the ball a lot better than Blake Fryer can. But let's go back to Michigan for just a minute. Maybe a surprise player that you expect to step up, or one thing you're really feeling convicted about, or maybe just a strange prediction. What do you see this year for Michigan?
I think that their offense could be just as good as anybody in the country. I think that the talent is totally there. I think whether Cade or JG's got the arm and the running ability, but as you said to me when we were driving a motorhome, keep in mind that Cade was the number 1 quarterback for Alabama.
And Alabama's board, according to Josh Gaddis, yeah.
And he also, in 3 quarters, threw a Michigan record for passing touchdowns. So he can light it up if he really has to.
That was against the Michigan State defense, though. So
it's against Rutgers.
No, I thought it was against Michigan State.
We won that game. But whoever we got at quarterback, we are going to be able to go spread. We're going to run it down their throat, throw deep bombs. We got 8 receivers who could start on any team. Our running backs could be the best duo in the country. And I think the guy's going to pop out is going to be Andrew Anthony. I know it's a common pick, but you see what he did against Michigan State. I know worst passing defense in the country, where he just made plays. I think he's fast. He's big, 6'3" or something. He's gonna be trouble against cornerbacks. Yeah. And I think that Ronnie Bell coming back is going to be enormous. Wilson, Cornelius, Johnson, Darius. You go on and on. I think on the defensive side, they're definitely going to come back from what they were last year, but I think they're still going to be good. I think people are going to thinking people that. Bleh, I think that people are thinking too much down on them and not taking them for what they really could be because they're still very good. Corners are good, D line is good, linebackers are a question mark.
Yeah.
Except for Junior Colson, but I think overall Michigan is going to go 11-1, or technically 11-2. Bowl game against Bama, they're going to lose. I could see if they go 11-1, what might happen is they get knocked down to number 5 for some reason and play Utah in the Rose Bowl. That'd be kind of fun. But other than that, I think they're going to have a great year on offense and a solid year on defense. They're going to.
Well, I'm in the same place, and some of this is predicated on what we've been hearing more recently, and that is that game on October 1 could be an 11 a.m. kickoff as opposed to a 7 p.m. kickoff in Iowa City. That would change the math a little bit for me. Kinnick at night, no one wants to go into that place and into that particular just environment setting. So, but I think, as you said, on offense, what Michigan has is they can score points and they can beat you a number of different ways. If they need to play smash mouth football, they can put three tight ends on the field that are all really good tight ends.
Don't forget, maybe best tight end class in the country.
Well, I mean, that's what we talked about. Some of these great schools have 2 tight ends. That Georgia, Notre Dame, Utah, Michigan. They all have those 4 schools might have 8 of the best 15 tight ends in the country, which is amazing. I think that Michigan can run the ball by blowing open holes with that great offensive line, and I think that the accuracy of J.J. McCarthy will allow them to do more long, sustained drives, and I think it's the big play potential of J.J. McCarthy. Did I say McCarthy twice?
Yeah.
The accuracy of Cade McNamara, rather,
it's kind of good.
And the big play capability of J.J. McCarthy.
So, question: who do you think's going to start at quarterback this year?
Well, that's what Harbaugh's. The better question is who's QB1. And the one thing that I would say about the quarterback battle at Michigan is this: I get it. If you have 2 quarterbacks, you don't have one quarterback. I've heard that a million times, and I understand it, and I generally agree with it. The one thing I would say though is that sometimes you got to have a big burly back on the field. Sometimes you have to have a third down, but I think that what Harbaugh is considering is situational quarterback use. So if you have to do the 4-minute drill and you want to control the game with short passes, and because you're going to do a lot of line checks, obviously you're going to put Cade McNamara in there. If, for instance,
need some shots.
Well, if for instance the game is 21-20, the other team fumbles on their own 45, I put J.J. McCarthy and I take a shot. Because he can throw that long ball and he can run it a little bit. So I think that Michigan has a number. Their special teams are fantastic. Like you said, it's about the defense, and especially for me, the concern is the middle of the defense at the linebacker position. Nikhai Hill-Green might be working through an early season injury. I have huge confidence in Junior Colson, but I don't know if Michigan were to lose him or lose Nikhai Hill-Green, then how they would handle a team that does, for instance, what Rutgers did last year, which is shrink the game down, run a lot of zone read stuff, and just mess with your linebackers. Again, I think Michigan will get pass rush. I think that their secondary is young, but it's an as talented of a secondary group as I remember Michigan having. They're a year or 2 years away from being elite, and they'll get picked on for sure. But yeah, I think Michigan can win enough games with its offense, with its special teams, to mask the defensive deficiencies against all but the best teams. So I'm not worried about Penn State. I don't think Penn State's going to push Michigan. I'm always worried about Michigan State. I think that Peyton Thorne, Jaden Reed, and then the 2 tailbacks they have coming in, just enough where Michigan State has 80% of Michigan's talent, but that 20% gap just gets closed with a couple bad calls or an injury or some fluky play, a fumble somewhere along the line. I think that will be a war, but I'm with you. I think Michigan runs the table. I don't know if they win every game comfortably, but I think they run the table and they get to Columbus at 11-0.
Like it. Same here.
So we will be back with our Week 1 predictions soon as the season starts Thursday night, and then we go into Labor Day weekend with, well, we just love it is because we have football Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday night, and Monday night, college football matchups. So one of our favorite weekends of the year. We will talk to you before then with our picks against the spread.
Peace.